everyone. I just want to thank you for joining us. This is actually the first event as a part of the ACM Conference on Fairness, Accountability, and Transparency. So this event marks the beginning of the conference as a kind of kickoff, and it's being held at a moment of growing public discussion about the nature and scale of social challenges presented by artificial intelligence and other related technologies. So this conference aims to bring together a wide range of interdisciplinary scholars, activists, government officials, all to confront the ways in which these new computational tools impinge upon human rights, democracy, equality, and inclusion. So this is a community keynote. It's a newer format for us at FAccT, and they're really centered on the work of grassroots organizations who interrogate emergent technologies and the impacts on their lives. So it's held as a virtual pre-conference as an effort to kind of operate in the spirit of community. So it's free and open to all, rather than paywalls associated with traditional conference venues. So we really appreciate you making time to join us here today. And this year's community keynotes have been organized by our advocacy research chairs, including our moderator today, Juanita Negron. So Juanita is the Director of Research and Policy at Coworker, where she leads participatory research and investigations with workers and advocates on emerging technologies and trends in the workplace across industries. So without further ado, I'll pass the mic on to Juanita, who will be kind of running the show here today.
Great. Hello, everyone. Great to be connected. Again, I'm Juanita Negron, the Director of Research and Policy at Coworker. I'm very excited to be hosting this conversation today with one of the workers that Coworker has had the immense pleasure of learning from and working with and strategize on the changing nature of labor conditions. But before I go into that, just wanted to do a few logistical things so that we can start on the same page with a few things that we can know. One of them is this webinar is actually going to be an hour and 15 minutes long. So it's going to go over by 15 minutes. Hopefully you can join all of it, but we felt like there was a lot to cover, and we wanted to really give the space to give this conversation the attention it needs. And then the second logistical thing is for Q&A, we are going to leave opportunities to ask questions at the end. But if there is a piece of the conversation that's essential to you understanding what we're talking about, please feel free to drop a question, a clarification question on a Q&A. And we will address it in real time. But otherwise, leave your questions for the last 10 to 15 minutes of the Q&A. So with that being said, I want to start off with a quote that actually Mitra from Upturn brought into the conversation when we were prepping for this. And she mentioned truck drivers are on their own, but super surveilled. What we mean by that is we need to put the technological changes within historical context of what have been long-standing historical labor conditions. And for truck drivers, that has been everything from sexual assault, gender violence for female truck drivers. They have wage issues, misclassification of drivers, slow regulatory responses to problematic labor conditions, and economic conditions such as, predatory CDL schools that take advantage of workers that often see truck driving as their last resort. And so with these historical labor conditions at hand, we have rapidly the introduction of technology coming in pretty rapidly. Everything from the automation and ChatGPT that many of us have increasingly are hearing about, but there's productivity monitoring as well, and lots of different video surveillance and applications that they have to engage and contend with. The variety of technologies that are entering the trucking industry at the intersection of the problematic labor conditions noted here seem overwhelming to do, to challenge, to approach, to engage a workforce that is pretty disaggregated and independent. And among the challenges, there are glimmers of hope and models of how we can understand the technology that's happening, strategize and think about how to not only push back on these trends, but also empower the industry, the workers overall, to have a voice, both in resolving the past issues and in addressing the changes that are coming up ahead. And so we're going to get a chance to get a sneak peek through the work of the amazing Desiree, who is the co-founder of Real Women in Trucking. Real Women in Trucking was formed as a protest group in 2010 to combat the growing problem of censorship from other organizations. There were organizations that were keeping female truck drivers from coming forth about allegations of sexual assault and sexual harassment. And Real Women in Trucking, which Desiree founded, was a protest to that. But since then, since 2010, they've received, they've become a 501c3 and also a trade association. So now they're doing much broader worker engagement and have a very strong voice in the trucking industry. We're also going to be joined by Mitra, the Senior Director of Economic Justice at Upturn, who is going to talk about some of the emerging work that they are doing with Desiree in regards to not only all the variety of technological changes coming up ahead, but there's still the power of big tech also in the sidelines of what truckers have to deal with. And so with that being said, we're going to show a short clip to introduce you to Desiree, to the trucking industry, and then we're gonna go into Q&A with Desiree. Yes, these are the people behind the technology that we talk about and that all of you are going to talk about next week at FAccT. And these are the stories and the experiences that we want to center as we think about solutions and better systems, better technological systems. That clip was from a forthcoming documentary, and we're going to try to get permission from Nessa, the director, to circulate that more broadly. But with that being said, I'd like to welcome Desiree Wood, the co-founder again from Real Women in Trucking, and Amitra Ebadolanani from Upturn. And hi, Desiree.
Hi.
I love watching this clip every time that I do. It reminds me of why I do the work I do at Coworker. But if you could, we have a lot to talk about, obviously, about technology, but just to dive into who you are, can you just share with us what first brought you into the trucking industry? What did you enjoy most about it?
Well, like, in the film clip, I entered like a lot of other people. I'm 58, but at the time, I think I was in my early 40s, late 30s, something like that. I don't know. Can't remember now. And my kids had grown up and moved out. It was just me. I went to college pretty late in life. I was a single mom, a runaway, had my daughter when I was 15. So I had a really hard life, but I really wanted to get an education. I went to college, started, I think, at around 37. I was on the 15-year plan. It took me that long to get through it. But when I was a junior, I was like, I can't work in an office. Like, I'll go insane. So I really wanted to use all the skills that I had acquired from being a teenage single mother and learning how to survive in the world and figure it out to help do something else. And I thought, I've always taken road trips and just like picked up and moved to a new town. And I just know I'm capable of like just going out there and figuring it out. And so I thought this would be a great thing for me. I'm moving around all the time, going to different places. And at the time I had nowhere to live. So I'm like, I'll just live on the road. I'll take my time off wherever I'm at. And, you know, that's what I thought. So, but almost immediately I saw that people were dropping off like flies, and mostly because they are not told much about the job. But they are these CDL schools, they don't have a lot of regulation. The states don't, you know, you could pretty much just start one up, and you get whatever money you can from these individuals, or you can get them to get a grant to pay you, and all these different programs that they're coming in, and there's no tighter retention. So the school got the money, the starter company got the money, but the person isn't in the industry a few months later. So there's this tremendous drop off of all of these people coming in. And that was something that I saw right away. And that they were really pushing you to get out there and drive a lot faster than you had the skill to do it. And I didn't want to be an unsafe driver. I didn't want to have an accident, but it was pretty clear to me that the students work cheap. And if they're always saying there's a driver shortage, then it's like a call to action to come get into truck driving school. You're going to make $80,000 in your first year, which is a total lie. And a lot of people had accidents. They're sexually assaulted in the first few weeks. There's just all of or they get out there and it's just not what they thought it was going to be, because it's a very long working day. It's something that most people don't understand, that you're working 11 hours a day just to drive, but that's not all the work that you do. So that was sort of the shocker for me right away. But I loved the driving, and I still love the driving, even though I don't get to do it much anymore.
Thank you. And we'll go into that. So what you're saying is the industry was very much lures workers in, but treats them indispensably, meaning that it doesn't really fulfill like expectations. It's not safe. It's wage expectations. It's not safe. But it keeps, it sort of keeps churning workers into the system. And for you, like there was a real draw to it. And then you started facing these challenges. Could you go into sort of when you decided in the clip to start to do the advocacy, particularly like you focused around sexual assaults and gender violence?
Yeah, when I first went, I went to my 4 or 5 week school, and then they have these recruiters come in on like the last week, and they don't tell you that there's actually like many companies that you could start out with. They only expose you to like 2 or 3, and over the time I've learned that because they get some sort of kickback from these 2 or 3. So there's a lot of money in recruiting and headhunting, and there's no truth in recruiting laws. So you can say whatever you want. These are salespeople. They are not drivers, and they get paid commission to lure you to a certain company. So that's the incentive, to not tell you the whole story and get your ass in the seat for orientation day. So I ended up at a company called Covenant Transport, the one you see on the highway that says it's not a choice, it's a child. And I was like, wow, here I am in my life. And here at this company, I'm at the breaking point, so I'm going to go with it. Well, what they didn't tell me is that I'm going to be doing team driving with somebody that I've never met before. And I did get a female trainer, but she really terrorized me during my training. She liked to make fun of me, poke fun, harass me to drive fast, break the rules. And she was popping pills, painkillers that are pretty much doctor shopping across the country. And I'm on the truck with her. I didn't learn enough with her to graduate out of the training. I had to go with a second trainer, a guy who helped me, polish my backing skills. But this particular company uses what they call the team business model. So once you're done with your trainer for the 35, 45 days, you now have to go find a co-driver to do team driving for 6 months, which is another student that probably has a few more days experience than you. So basically the blind leading the blind, and one person sleeps while the other person drives. The truck doesn't stop. Now, as a consumer, you know, everybody likes their stuff in 2 days. But what that means for the truck driver, especially for these student fleets, is you're now living and working in a tractor that's the size of an elevator and in bunk beds with 2 seats in the front. You're going to be sleeping in there. You're going to be changing your clothes in there. You're often going to have to be going to the bathroom in there with just a curtain with this person that you barely know. And every kind of bad thing that you can imagine happens in that situation. You don't have any relationship with this person. And you're going to leave the place that hired you and maybe never see them for an entire month. This is where I saw the danger right away. Where you saw in the video where I kind of my mindset changed. I had been left in the desert in New Mexico by my co-driver that got really drunk and threw my stuff out on the street and sprayed me with bleach. And I went to go tell the security at the place we were parked, and he ran ahead of me and told them that I was a lot lizard working the parking lot. And because I was a woman and they had never met a woman truck driver, they assumed that I was a prostitute and that I should not be heard. They didn't want to hear a single syllable out of my mouth about why I was there. They just assumed the worst. They drove me back to Albuquerque and left me there with no money. My phone was dead. And when I did finally get a hold of my company, the first thing they said was, "Did you break the Qualcomm?" which is the communication device between the company and the truck. Like, there was no, "Are you okay?" Anything. And they let this guy drive the truck he just had 5 Long Island iced teas. They let him take that tractor trailer out on Interstate 40 with a high security load of aluminum alloy wheels headed for an automobile plant. And I'm like, I'm sober, I'm a truck driver, but I get thrown off and left stranded here. And I was there for like 5 days. And they, wouldn't give me a bus ticket. When they did, they gave it to me from a town that was 150 miles away. All these little things that pick at you to make you want to get to your breaking point and just say, F it, I'm going home. That is what I saw over and over, is this provocative language and picking and just trying to provoke you to leave, because they can always say they have a truck driver shortage and they can always go to the government and get more money for CDL training. And nobody ever says, hey, how do you have a labor shortage and over a 100% turnover rate? Because in the training sector, the turnover is double what the industry average is overall. And that is something you don't see published a lot, but it's in court records that I've obtained. So it was, students are a dime a dozen. They work cheap, they're expendable, and we could do whatever we want to them. And so the rapes that I started, when I had that incident and I started talking to other drivers, and they were like, yeah, this girl got raped, this girl got gang raped. And when you say, what should we do? Well, it's best to not say anything, because then they're going to start coming after you. And that is exactly what happened when I followed their policies and procedures to report what happened. They started gunning for me. And they never did an investigation. This incident happened at a place that had surveillance cameras. They never went to look at them or or do anything about it. And as I started talking to other women and men at different companies and my own company, I started seeing a real pattern that this was happening, not just at my company, but every company that were using student teams for this business model, which is purely greed-based and unnecessary, and nobody wanted to do anything about it, including the existing Women Trucking Association, the American Trucking Association, and you know, it took till with the help of coworker, you know, we got our foot in the door in 2019 to talk to the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, and still we have no immediate action.
Thank you so much. And Desiree, that revisiting how I started the meeting, which was truck drivers are very much on their own, but yet they're heavily surveilled, because now, given what you mentioned would have been historical, unresolved situations for workers, particular female workers, as you've heard, that have to deal with an added layer of vulnerability in a workplace, you also have the introduction of technology in this mix. And as you know, and for many people in the audience, Dr. Karen Levy in 2015 started documenting the ways that different electronic monitoring systems were being introduced, given all the context that Desiree has given us, which she has only gone really to the surface. Dr. Karen Levy comes and starts documenting electronic monitoring systems. And can you tell us, given sort of the struggles, the organizing and the protesting that you started doing with founding Real Women in Trucking, when in your horizon did you also start to see different types of technological systems, either for enforcing safety, productivity monitoring, enter into your sphere as well? And what was sort of your reaction when you saw that emerging? Was it just like, I don't have time for this, this is like another terrain of struggles, or were you actively also thinking and trying to understand it?
Well, when I entered trucking, we still had flip phones. You know, smartphones were relatively new. And I think that I've got my first one was a Palm Trio Mini. And a lot of drivers didn't want anything to do with them whatsoever. We didn't have the ELD mandate. They were just implementing these engine emissions. And that was sort of the first thing that I saw, was that they were requiring all of these engine emissions, and they hadn't tested it. So these drivers were being kind of forced to adapt to these new trucks. And these trucks are as much as buying a house, you know, and you're having to be forced to comply with this. This hasn't been tested. And within the first couple of years, a lot of them failed. You know, the whole engine needed an overhaul just a few months into it. This is really expensive. It hurt a lot of small business owners by having to do this. So you see this implementation of new technology, sensors, they don't work. Now the truck doesn't work. And the burden is always on the little guy and the little gal. So we did have the paper logs when I started. And my thought was initially, because of where I was working, and they really want to get everything they can get out of you, and you're working so cheap, they are going to get you to be doing all the crappy loads, all of the cheap freight, and they want every penny they can get out of you. So in my mind, having an ELD that said, I'm out of hours, I can't work anymore, was going to protect me. By the time the mandate came in for the ELD, I was an owner operator. And right away, I started speeding, because I was trying to still keep the same schedule that I did before, that I knew I could get to this place. But the ELD, you know, if there's an accident on the road, now you're stuck. You're going to get stuck in the middle of downtown Houston, and you can't go anywhere. So now I've got to cut my day short, an hour and a half, to make sure I have a place to park. So I'm only getting, truck drivers are mostly paid by the mile, which is in Karen Levy's book. So I'm not getting paid when I'm sitting in a loading dock getting loaded or fueling or all of these other things that I have to do as part of the job. I'm only getting paid when the wheels are going around. And if they're going around slow, I'm really not getting paid. But if I cut my own day short, just because I know I don't want to run out of time in the middle of downtown, now I'm making it even worse on myself. So that was sort of the one thing that I saw right away, is I cannot drive the same way that I used to be able to drive. I'm not a logbook cheater. I never was. But realistically, if it takes usually 30 minutes to get from this side of town to the other side of town, but today it took me 45 minutes. Yes, I'm going to find a way to shave off what I did on my break to fit all of that in. I don't really think that that is such a horrible thing, and I know there's always bad actors in some industries, but the bad actors are still have found every hole you could possibly exploit in the ELD. So what we deal with a lot, not at Real Women in Trucking, our other organization, which is called Truckers Emergency Assistance Responders, is what we call ghost drivers. And this is where an unethical company is hiring a driver that they know can't get hired too many other places, or they're new and naive, and they'll say, drive your 11 hours and then pull over on the side of the road and call us and we'll refresh your hours. And basically what they're doing is they're seating another driver on the log and telling that driver to keep going. So now they're driving over 11 hours. They're tired. They don't know any better. And then when they start complaining or, they don't pay them and they leave them stranded. So our organization helps them get home, but we're starting to see an epidemic of it, and no one's doing anything about it. Not the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, and not the Secretary of State, where some of these companies will, they get a little heat, they close up shop, start a new LLC, get a new authority, and do it all over again, because the system is built for you to do this for this amount of time, and they figured out how to manipulate this new technology, while at the same time older drivers who've never had an accident, never had an incident, are being forced to have this thing in their cab.
What have been, just as we looked for some of our regulatory agencies currently to deal with the issues of technology in a workplace, what have been the challenges with getting regulatory responses to any of the labor concerns that you've mentioned?
Well, like as you stated earlier, regulatory response is slow. I've actually mentioned these ghost drivers that we're getting more and more and more. When I saw some of their representatives at the Mid-America Truck Show this last March, and I was told that we need to make a complaint on their National Consumer Complaint Database, which puts the onus on the driver. And if you look at this complaint database, it's cumbersome. It's very difficult to navigate. And in my experience, in the couple of times that I have helped a driver put a complaint in there, it's a black hole. Like, you're never going to get a response from there. So that needs to be better. The Fair Labor Standards Act exempts truck drivers from being paid for all of their time. That has to be repealed. I cannot think of anything that's more important for truck drivers, especially with autonomous trucks on the horizon, because what these autonomous trucks are going to do is take the fun part away from driving. The worst part of being a truck driver is pickup and delivery day. that's the day where you're maneuvering someplace, lots of turns, a lot of sitting. You're not getting paid because your tires are moving slow. So those are the days that you really, aren't making any money and you're working the most without any compensation. Autonomous trucks are going to do that open road driving. That's the fun part. And then you're going to be stuck doing the shitty part that you don't even get paid for right now. So until this Fair Labor Standards Act exemption is repealed, I don't know how they think that they're going to get anybody to do this kind of work.
Thank you so much. We're going to bring Mitra into the conversation now, but just to summarize what you've mentioned, there are truck drivers are facing a variety of labor conditions, very much on their own, as noted earlier. Really no recourse and as far as sort of regulatory responses. And you have the introduction of automation as well, that is, as you mentioned, is going to take the fun part of the job, while truck drivers themselves might have to deal with more productivity, monitoring, and metrics. Automation is actually going to take the part that you actually enjoy, and what's going to give back to you is a part you don't enjoy. And so the nature of the job itself is also changing. If we could leave some room as we bring Mitra to talk about what that future looks like, maybe we could leave it at the end of what do you envision that someone like yourself even would stay in the trucking industry and looking 15, 20 years out, if you feel like automation is gonna take over and what's gonna be left is gonna be you're still on your own, having to contend with all these issues, productivity measurement and metrics, and where's the human in the future of the trucking industry, and the enjoyment for yourself. So with that, I'm going to bring Mitra in, because while Desiree had been working through all of the issues that we've heard about, there has been the founding of an NGO that I'm sure you're all familiar with, Upturn, who's been really at the forefront of helping us understand how technology is shaping many parts of society, everything from criminal justice to housing, and now with the introduction of Mitra, doing more work in economic spaces. And so thank you, Mitra, for being here. Can you tell us a little bit about what Upturn does and what you've been focusing on generally?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's always an honor to share space with you and Desiree. My name is Mitra Abdullahi. I'm the Senior Project Director for Economic Justice at Upturn. Upturn advances equity in the design, governance, and use of technology. We have a number of focus areas, including in the fields of policing and economic justice. In the economic justice field, we focus primarily, but not exclusively, on how technology impacts access to public benefits, housing, and jobs. We have also completed research on issues related to credit and finance and discrimination in advertising, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a bit. Our labor and employment project has published reports on predictive hiring technologies and their equity impacts, and also on the digital hiring practices of large hourly employees. And you can find those reports on our website, which is www.upturn.org.
Great, thank you so much. Could you share with us, I mean, they seem like two worlds apart, really, the reality of what Desiree shared and the amazing kind of multi-issue investigatory research work. How did you both sync up or connect?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. I think to talk a little bit more about the trends that Upturn has been thinking about in terms of labor, as I think this conversation has underscored, the world of work is changing rapidly and tremendously. And distressingly, these changes are often to the detriment of workers. So organizations like my own, organizations like Coworker, other advocacy organizations have been really interested and invested in understanding how new and emerging technologies are affecting all aspects of work. And I think some of the issues that we have been focused on the most, one is algorithmic wage discrimination. Professor Veena Dubal has written about the ways in which the gig economy has fundamentally undermined the traditional moral economy of work, in which the presumption was that a laborer would alienate himself from his time, for his labor, in exchange for a wage that could sustain him. Now we have these opaque algorithms that may pay two workers wildly divergent wages for identical labor. The information asymmetries that exist make it tremendously difficult for workers to fully identify these instances of algorithmic wage discrimination and prevent conscientious consumers from understanding what proportion of their payments to gig companies are actually shared with the frontline workers. So those are extremely troubling and pressing problems made all the more challenging by the persistent legal misclassification of workers as independent contractors, which has enabled employers to evade compliance with minimum labor standards. As Desiree said, there are federal laws that completely exempt categories of workers from labor protections. A second major field, which I think affects truck drivers and certain other drivers disproportionately, is electronic worker surveillance and algorithmic management. We are living through a period of unprecedented surveillance of workers and the datafication of work, meaning that employers are collecting massive amounts of digital data on their workforces and then weaponizing that data against workers. Some of the most egregious and well-known examples of these trends can be found in places like Amazon warehouses, where surveillance and algorithmic management have pushed workers to fulfill intensely dangerous productivity expectations. As Desiree mentioned, this can also be found out on the road. These kinds of mechanisms lead to unprecedented injury levels, burnout, depression, many other harms, and can impede worker organizing efforts and interfere with workers' exercise of their legal rights. And then third, Upturn and other organizations have investigated issues relating to discrimination in online advertisement for a number of years now. It's long been unlawful to steer job ads away from people based on their race, gender, age, and other protected statuses. We came to intersect with Desiree and Real Women in Trucking when last year we filed an EEOC class action charge targeting Facebook's discriminatory ad delivery system, which was changing or disproportionately providing certain job ads to people based on their age or gender. So we are currently co-counseling that class action charge on behalf of Real Women in Trucking. My co-counsel is Peter Romer Friedman Law, and we're trying to draw attention to and challenge the ways that Facebook steers certain types of job ads away from users based on their gender and age. And I can show some slides whenever you're ready, whether now or later.
I was going to say, yeah, now it would be great to see the visual.
Sure. Okay. So just a little background in our charge, which is available online. You can find it on our website. We included 75 specific examples of age and gender discrimination in Facebook's ad delivery. All of the data that we use to support our charge came directly from Facebook's online ad library, which is a website that publishes all ads that are actively running on Facebook and all active and past or inactive ads that are classified as issues, elections, or politics ads. So
did you want to share your screen?
Yeah, I will. Okay. I just wanted to give a little bit of background first.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So although Facebook's ad library ordinarily does not publish the gender or age distributions of people who receive job ads, they do publish this type of information for the job ads that are classified in this issues, elections, or politics category. And so that's how we found some of the information that we relied on in our charge. And so just in case some people are visual learners, let me share my screen. Okay, so here we have some of our examples. Let me just try to go to the next screen. Okay, so truck drivers in North Carolina. For example, an employer published a job ad on Facebook seeking to hire truck drivers in the Durham, Raleigh, North Carolina area. The eligible audience for this job ad, so the people that the advertiser was trying to reach, was people of all genders who were 18 or older. But Facebook's ad delivery algorithm showed the ad to 94% men and only 5% women. And just 11% of the people who were showed the ads were older workers. So here's the ad here on the left. You can see that there are no terms on the ad limiting its delivery. But then when you look at the data that Facebook's ad library makes available, the vast majority of the people who see the ads are men. Those are the blue columns. And you can also see how underrepresented people over 55 are. Only 11% of people who saw the ads were over 55. Another example, fleet mechanics in Chicago. So in March of 2022, an employer posted a job ad for a fleet mechanic position in Chicago. Again, the eligible audience for this job, as set by the advertiser, was people of all genders who were 18 or older. Facebook's ad delivery algorithm showed the ad to a group of people that was over 99% men, less than 1% women, and only 9% of the group shown the ad were over the age of 55. Again, you can see the breakdown here. You can see the ad and the sort of wild age and gender disparity in the delivery. Portland Bureau of Transportation, this ad was shown between 30 and 35,000 times. It was not made available to people over the age of 55 or younger than 25. And it also was shown to 85% men, only 15% women. And even with the group of people over 55 completely left out, only 4% of people who were between 45 and 54 were shown the ad. So again, you've got the ad on the left, and then you have the breakdowns of how the ad was distributed, men in the blue columns, women in the green columns, and then the age group here on the far right. A landscaping ad, again, eligible audience as set by the advertiser was people of all genders, 18 and older, but this ad was shown to only 3% women and only 4% people who are 55 and older. Here again is the ad on the left, and here you have the age and gender breakdowns on the right. So those are just some of the examples that we collected in our charge. Again, there were 75. And, you know, I think that in a world where so many people rely on the internet to get information about significant economic life opportunities, including jobs, this kind of discrimination fueled by algorithms really eviscerates legal protections, anti-discrimination protections, and presents a troubling frontier of discrimination that needs to be addressed. So we are very pleased and honored to represent real women in trucking in this work.
Thank you so much, Mitra. And I have to say, Desiree, it feels absolutely overwhelming. And it's why I love working at the intersection of labor and tech, because you really, to understand the tech, you really have to go deep into the labor and design solutions from that point of really understanding the structural context of those jobs. This feels, for an advocate or someone on the outside, to think that the way that women truckers even get the jobs and get into the industry that we've already said is has historical challenges, has the automation that's changing the nature of the work. It feels incredibly disempowering. How do you find your voice in this? How do you strategize? What's your sense of sort of the future that's rapidly evolving, and sort of what truckers have any agency on? And I also want to let people know that you can start. We're going to move into Q&A in another 5 or 10 minutes. So feel free to start dropping any questions that you'd want Desiree or Mitra to answer.
There's so much going on with drivers right now, not just, women drivers. There are problems with the broker transparency. The brokers are really skimming the profit out of the loads right now. They don't let them know how much the shipper is actually paying for that load. There are some regulations on that, but there's no enforcement. The misclassification issue is huge. So many drivers are being paid on a 1099, and the American Trucking Association and these state trucking associations, which are really just tentacles of this larger lobby group, will have you believe that it's going to ruin all of these small businesses by clarifying the 1099 truck driver, like AB5 in California. It needs to be done. It has to be dismantled. There's so many drivers that are being paid on a 1099 when they are an employee, and they have no recourse when they are not paid their wages. Sometimes 5 or 6 weeks they're out there driving, and then they don't get a paycheck. And they say, well, you're on a 1099. So the states really aren't doing much to help them wage an hour. There's just not enough enforcement to help them. And in so many areas, the drivers are just feeling completely frustrated that nobody is really listening to what they're trying to say. They're out there moving the supply chain every day to make sure you have eggs and clothes on your back. And, on holidays, they're out there driving and trying to make a cup of coffee inside their truck, giving up life's little basic luxuries like using a bathroom. They're refused the bathroom at many places that they go, not being able to take a shower every day, and not getting like the very basic respect from communities to let them park, and not getting enough attention from state labor commissions that could help them with some of these wage and hour disputes, and definitely at the federal level. That I know there's people that are they have it on their radar, but it just doesn't move fast enough.
Great, thank you. And Mitra, since you work at that intersection of labor and tech, can you share a little bit of what types of partnerships, now that you're in this experience with Desiree, what types of collaborations or spaces could be taking place in the field to help with well-intentioned advocates and academics that want to partner with workers to help them work alongside workers and really designing strategies for pushing back? Any thoughts or insights?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'd like to share some examples from my other colleagues' work, actually. So I think that my fundamental message is, let's please center workers. Let's please think about the ways that we can translate our technical or academic knowledge and experience into work that is useful to working people. Because as we have discussed in this conversation, we are at the precipice of a sort of new world order for working people, not just in this country, but around the globe. And we really need to align ourselves with protecting workers and protecting their dignity and their basic rights, because some of the technologies that are emerging and proliferating at a scale never seen before are really potentially very damaging. So I think that it's on researchers and academics, people like ourselves, to think creatively about how we can translate our technical knowledge to something that is useful to working people. And I'll give you an example. So as I mentioned earlier, Upturn also has a benefits project where we look at public benefits in the United States. And we hold something called the Benefits Tech Advocacy Hub office hours. It's every other week. And what we do is we solicit questions and thoughts from legal aid and other advocates, so lawyers who help people navigate the loss of their public benefits. More and more, that loss of public benefits is due to technology. For example, in the Medicaid unwinding process that happened recently, tens of thousands of people who are actually still eligible have lost their benefits because of algorithms and other technical determinations. And so at these office hours, we try to provide guidance around the technologies that a state uses in public benefits programs, and help advocates who are representing individuals who have lost their benefits navigate challenging that loss of benefits. And for those of you who are attending FAccT next week and are interested in learning more about how we use our technical backgrounds to support on the ground fights in the economic justice area, you can come to our tutorial. It's session tutorial 7. It's June 12th. From 5 to 6:30 p.m. And it is about using technical skills to fight actual public benefits cuts and austerity policies. So I think, be creative, be courageous, go outside the box. I think carefully about how who your research benefits, the sort of political economy of your research. And, if I may say so, use it to fight the status quo and to expand justice in our world.
Thank you. Desiree, do you want to, before we start answering some of the questions, do you want to leave us with any thoughts about what, imagine, next week you get 10 emails from advocates, impacted by your story, by your advocacy, knowing everything that you're up against, and you and, millions of other truck drivers. What sorts of tips or suggestions would you have with partnering with workers that have so much to contend with? What sort of feedback would you give back to other technical experts or just advocates in general that may want to support?
Yeah, trucking it's disorganized by design. Deregulation made sure that truck drivers do not have power. We don't see each other on a regular basis. We don't return to the same place every night. And that has an impact on us not being able to form unions and work together, I'm working on a project right now called Freight Relay that is a test project to kind of take it back to where before deregulation, where you took, you went this far out and you came back and you went home and you slept in your own bed. But the way it is now is like you're a ping pong, you never know where you're going to be. We say you never know what you're going to do until 15 minutes after you're doing it. So that makes it so you can't do anything except drive. You can't organize. You can't get involved. It's hard to even go to your child's birthday and be able to say, I'm definitely going to be there. So I think it's important for people to know when you're listening to things about trucking, who are you listening from? Are you listening from an association that is that represents carriers? Because I think that's probably one of the biggest problems that I saw is, you turn on the news and they say, this is what's happening in trucking, and we're going to talk to the American Trucking Association, and people assume those are truck drivers, and they're not. They're lobbyists. And most of them never even seen a truck or been inside of one. So there's plenty of lobby groups that have the word trucking in their title that have absolutely nothing to do with worker protections. In fact, the opposite. And so you see these people that just recite these sound bites they heard from the American Trucking Association or Women in Trucking or some other trucking association. It's like, that's false. That is not not true whatsoever. So make sure you're talking to a worker that's in the trenches before you start doing these studies. You know, we don't have a toilet inside the truck, but we have a truck that'll drive all by itself. Like we have the technology to make a truck that drives by itself, but we can't make a humane workplace for the individual that's in there, and we try to paint them as the problem. So that's kind of what you know, I see too many times is, you know, I got this great idea to improve to solve the truck driver shortage. Well, there isn't a shortage. There isn't. We just have a toxic workplace that we need to, you know, correct.
Thank you. And with that, we'll go into some of the questions. This is for either of you that may know a little bit more about how automation is expected to change pay. Chris had asked, for example, could automation be viewed as a co-driver so you can legally be on for more hours, miles, or is it likely to change the pay per mile since the automation is getting all the miles? Do you have any thoughts about how automation is expected to change pay and for it to be viewed as a co-driver?
I've heard this, you know, we're gonna solve the team driving by letting the automated truck be the co-driver. I know some safety drivers of these autonomous trucks, and they tell me they would never ever leave this truck unsupervised ever, and they are the safety drivers testing them. When you're doing team driving, and I see one of my board member founders is on, she does team driving with her grandson. She's been driving 54 years. Now they have a relationship, they have a lot of trust, and they don't push it, burn it, you know, to the limit. But when you're driving with somebody that you don't know very well, and there's thick fog, or there's deer out on the road, or there's a bunch of bugs in the summer that are going to get all over the sensors, snow, ice, steer tire that blows out. There are so many things that happen with trucks that you have to make a judgment call in a split second. That an autonomous truck, we just don't know. So right now they're on flat, straight highway. But that is not all where trucking takes place. I personally would not be sleeping behind a truck that's operating by itself. If it decided it wanted to slow down, I'm going to wake up. If it veered out of the way, I am going to wake up. And you do that even with it when there's a human person at the wheel. You feel that this is a moving vehicle that could be loaded 80,000 pounds. You are going to die probably if it rolls over or something like this. So you're not getting restful sleep in the first place unless you really 100% trust person. And as far as the pay, I don't know, because they've rolled this thing out without even having that conversation. I've even heard that they're going to have operators sitting on their couch at home, you know, and that's how these things are going to be operating. They don't want to talk about how are they going to come down, do mountain driving in the snow. I personally don't think that, you know, when you cover the sensors, how are they going to communicate? A truck driver, if we see a deer on the highway, we are supposed to floor it. We don't swerve because we'll roll the truck. So if an autonomous truck sees an object, is it supposed to floor it, or is it supposed to swerve? What if it's a child? Are they supposed to floor it, or is it supposed to swerve? How does the autonomous truck tell the difference between a deer and a child? Or, you know, these are things that a human being has to make a decision in a split second.
So is it safe? Thank you so much. I mean, is it safe to say that you're just skeptical of the technology being there at any to really be able to be a co-pilot? Because, you know, you said in the summertime, bugs can get into the sensors, the ability for it to tell the difference between a deer versus a child, which truck drivers are taught to floor it when it comes to a deer. It's like the technology is not well, as far as you can see, it's not there.
No, I mean, where they've been testing it is flat, straight highway that doesn't have a lot of weather. And so that's not reality, you know, of what we do, you know, going cross country, small towns, rural communities. And there's just, you know, that's great that you can make this big truck drive all by itself, but let me see it do what I do. And that's what we haven't seen.
Thank you. So maybe for now, the technology in certain terrains, it might be doable, but for widespread implementation, it's it's not there yet.
Yeah, I don't know. And I wouldn't trust to sleep it for sure.
Yeah.
You know,
and hopefully for people working on automation, you know, that this, you really need to be living and understanding the truck lifestyle to account for all of those things that Desiree mentioned that you might take for granted. We have another.
Sorry, if I can just really quickly add, like, I just think that everything that Desiree said underscores a more fundamental point, which is that we have to respect human expertise and lived experience. And somehow in the scramble to maximize profit, that is lost in the shuffle at great human cost, not only for the workers, but for all of us. And I think that that is a choice that we make, and it's a choice that we can confront, and we can choose different behaviors. We can choose to prioritize human expertise, human dignity, human safety over, you know, the next shiny technology, automation, you know, Chat GPT, pick your favorite, you know, tech boogeyman. And really, I think that's something that we as researchers, technologists, advocates must do morally. This is the time to take that stand.
Thank you so much, Mitra. I think that is on point completely. And we have 7 minutes and 3 more questions to get through. And so hopefully we'll be we'll be able to address all of the questions. Keep them coming, even if we run out of time. We can definitely engage Desiree and Mitra's expertise to answering questions you may have. So one more from Chris. Mitra, it's for you. In terms of the statistics on job ad display, the statistics on job ad display are certainly a call to action. Are you able to, and the question has been, hold on.
I think it was a question about aggregating
the data across an industry sector, across all the job ads. Yeah,
and the short answer is no. And I think it's such an important question because, as I mentioned earlier, we were only able to pull a small number, a small subset of ads that happen to be contained in the Facebook job ad, the Facebook ad library. And those are just a small fraction of ads that run on Facebook. So I think one of the things that we have advocated for and that we believe is that Facebook should be required to provide additional public information about its ad delivery system. That information is critical for regulators and members of the public to understand bias in that system. We think that they can and should compile and make public summary statistics on advertiser accounts that have the highest disparity rates, publish more demographic comparisons across types of ads. So, you know, Chris, you're exactly right. Like, that information is so essential and we don't have it, and we should have it. We as consumers, members of the public, we should have information about how this plays out in practice.
Thank you. And for both of you, excellent question. A lot of this talk, Anonymous wrote, is centered on exploitative labor practice enabled by social norms, the atomization of American society and labor with 1 and 2, complicated and enabled by technology. Both 1 and 2, the exploitative labor practices and the atomization of American society and labor, remind this person of issues from organizing farm workers like Cesar Chavez. What are some generalizable principles from your experience, Desiree, that we as a community can translate to other domains?
Well, I've often thought about the farm workers in doing this. My family were migrant field workers. And so I remember my mom telling me stories, you work all day and then they call immigration on you, right, when it's time to pay you. And all of the kinds of things that happen to the farm workers. And over the years, because of the work of Cesar Chavez and the United Farm Workers, Dolores Huerta, they have so much more protections than truck drivers. And going back to that, we're disorganized by design. Like we don't even have one place that we have coffee together, or anything. And that makes it so difficult. Now, social media has helped somewhat to help us connect with one another, but there's very much this us against them in trucking. And until we get the public outrage to mobilize and support truck drivers, I don't think that the trucking industry is going to take it seriously. That's why for me, I started using social media because I went up the chain of command in the company. They didn't care. I joined a women's trucking association. They didn't care. I went to the federal agency. They didn't care. I went to social media and people started caring that aren't in trucking. And that's where I started actually being able to get my story out. There have been a couple truck driver protests, but often I see special interest groups or political groups sort of co-opt and infiltrate into them and start taking the one important topic and spreading their own agenda into it that ends up making a lot of other groups go, okay, I don't want to be involved. So let's back off from this. So that's really troublesome. I certainly would love to see a movement like, farm workers they're getting overtime pay. They've gone to the state capitol in California. They have it's not perfect for them. It's such a backbreaking job, such hard work. But the truck drivers are doing some stuff out there that is just as, grueling, and they do need the public support and they need more awareness from communities to help them. When they're parked, they're sleeping. They're trying to get rest. Don't run them off. Don't create zoning to run them out. Stop seeing them as criminals. They're not criminals. They're human beings with families that are trying to work.
Thank you. So we need the general public to care more.
That's a big thing.
And take the story to them. One more question, if we can get it in for Ushnish. Does a trolley problem describe the stop for deer versus a child have different solutions for self-driving trucks versus self-driving cars? Because they point out the research indicates the solutions do differ by country culture for stopping for young versus elderly. Have you noticed any research, Desiree or Mitra, regarding what's happening in the self-driving trucks and how smart the systems are for detecting human versus animals, or young versus elderly, etc.?
They've been pretty quiet about what the capability. I think I saw finally a few months ago, one video came out of how the truck would react to a steer tire blowout. That took like they were really far into this technology before they even put that one video out. Now, I know a few of these companies have folded up. I feel like a lot of the promises that they've made are for fundraising and to raise capital instead of, according to 2 years ago, we would need 50% less truck drivers this year, according to what they were saying 2 years ago. So they've been very not transparent, and And that makes it even more problematic as far as I'm concerned. You know, everybody says, oh, we're gonna, you know, final mile. Well, final mile means that I'm not getting paid and that I am going to have to actually unload the freight myself by hand. And I've done that before, and it's hard work. I mean, in your own communities, when you go to Starbucks and McDonald's and you see this big tractor trailer there in the middle, and that guy's out there unloading it himself. They're not only driving it, doing 20 stops, going unloading, and in some places they're having to go stock the shelves too. They're doing like 4 or 5 jobs, and then they go home for just a few hours and have to commute back to the truck. I mean, there's a lot of room for improvement in this job. So when you're talking about final mile work, we've got to kind of really break it down and go, this is too much. You know, it's a young person's job, but then there's only two or 3 years until they're going to have their knee blow out or their back injured. So it's just it's not sustainable the way that they have set this up.
Thank you. And then, yeah, closing the gap between the research, the real-time research, and the workers now, like not just doing the research, but empowering workers with the information and closing that gap. Because it seems to me like you're also, probably because it's proprietary, a lot of this research is quiet for up to a point until they release, you know, studies.
And the other thing is the liability question. You know, if the sensor failed, who's in trouble? You know, is the driver that's sleeping in the bunk when the thing is their team driver, and the sensor got covered with a bunch of dead bugs from the road, and then it crashed because it thought, you know. So we don't know a lot about what the insurance industry has to say about this, who's the responsible party. And so there's so much to be defined still.
Thank you so much, Desiree and Mitra. Absolutely inspiring, both of you, and the work that you're doing. And I want to thank you on behalf of the FACT conference for kicking off the FACT conference informally on a Friday. And we look forward to seeing your work in the field. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.